Well, last week was an interesting week in Washington. The Protect College Sports Act, which has taken a lot of headlines, caused a lot of controversy, and has been the subject of a lot of disagreements on both sides in college football, came center stage. They tried to get it passed before the August recess. That did not happen. So, where does this bill go now? We're joined by none other than Nathan Brown of the College Football Mafia group to discuss that and a lot more. Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Southern sports scene. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Make sure y'all do us a favor. Y'all hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short on the Southern sports scene. We want to thank our good friends and partners over at FrostBuddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Use that promo code SSS15 to get 15% off of your first purchase on all things cups, tumblers, and mugs. We want to thank our friends at Chike Nutrition. 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 1 gram of sugar in every healthy, hearty cup of iced coffee. Click the link below to get yourself 10% off your first purchase. And as always, we want to thank our friends at Buzzer for allowing us to have our videos be streamed there. Get on over to the Buzzer app today and start listening to your favorite content creators out on the internet. Nathan, they call him the Bomber at times. Bomber Brown here of College Football Mafia here to talk all things Protect College Sports Act. Nathan, good to finally have you on. I've been thinking about having you on the show for a long time at this point. Glad that we can finally meet. How are you today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invitation, Lucas. It's great. I really appreciate going and sharing my opinions and what I know. But certainly, the world of college football is crazy, and the Protect College Sports Act has just made it that much more.
So, with this bill and with everything that we've seen from it, just kind of give a rundown of PCSA, what it ultimately would mean, because there's been a lot of back and forth with the SEC and Big Ten disagreeing on what the contents of what's within the bill. Now you have a couple weeks later, the women's sports obviously comes into question. There's some antitrust issues with that. Just kind of give a rundown of the last month of this bill, because this has been an insane just last month for the way that this bill has been kind of been thrown around. There's a lot of disagreements between the conferences. And I mean, if you and I are being honest, this is obviously going to benefit the SEC and Big Ten and could mean the extinction for the ACC and even likely the Big 12.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the bill is to come in and try to control a few things. First and foremost, they want an antitrust exemption. The NCAA and the conferences want protections from things, all these lawsuits these athletes are putting out and winning. That's one of the things they want to control. And then they want to try to control spending. They put in spending caps. I think the last number I heard was 48.8 million or something. They would put a cap on what you could actually pay to retain and get new athletes. They would supposedly protect Olympic sports and women's sports in this bill. The federalization of it would basically say they're going to be funded up to and above $5 million each to keep running. That money would be available to each program if they wanted to support those type of things. But at the end of the day, the cap of 19 teams, the 5 year waiting period if you go independent before you could join another conference, and then at the end of the day, a bill that is being driven mostly by the Big Ten and the SEC. At the end of the day, everybody else is just sort of floating along with them anyway. But my biggest concerns around it have to do with the athletes and how they're compensated and how they're treated. And what they end up getting out of the bill at the end of the day is going to be determined. Either the federal government's going to come in and bring the hammer, or the whole thing's going to blow up, which is kind of where I see the PCSA going. And it'll go into these conferences doing their own work. So at the end of the day, everybody's got a little piece of it. Cody Campbell came in and he wanted to stop the Super League, first of all. Who does he represent? Texas Tech. And then he supposedly wanted to protect all the other conferences from being predated by the Big Ten and the SEC. At the end of the day, They're trying to do too much all at once. And if they really wanted to get stuff done, they'd take the time, they'd slow down, they'd negotiate it, and this would take a year or two to really buzz out. So I don't know. In my opinion, they tried to do too much too soon.
Do you think that Cody Campbell is the wrong voice to get this out?
The timing couldn't have been worse, could it? Cody
Right.
Campbell comes out last year. He goes to the President of the United States. They put this commission together. They do a lot of TV interviews. They do the long boardroom type picture. They say, we will control and protect college sports as it works. And then what did Cody do? He went in and he immediately put his money to work with lobbying, and he did everything he could to get the bill written and to get it written in a way that would benefit, at the end of the day, I gotta say it, would benefit Texas Tech. How does something that is in federal code at the end of the day protect Texas Tech's ability to continue to strive and compete for a national championship in football? And since then, it's just become this sort of oligarchical type thing. Everybody's trying to tell everybody else what to do, and when everybody's in control, nobody's in control.
So you mentioned the cap limit that NIL would cost. You said it was around 48.8 million. So I think I saw a chart the other day and I saw how it was divided up. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be 75% for football. I think it would be like 10% for basketball, 10% for baseball, and then I believe it might have been 5% for the other sports. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So two things. If I said NIL, I misspoke. It's revenue sharing. That number would be the amount that a school could pay to pick up and then retain their own athletes. The athletes themselves still retain the ability to go out, do name, image, and likeness.
Right.
At this point, all those dollars are supposed to be regulated by another entity that's sort of screwed up, which is the College Sports Commission, the CSE, the NIL Go. But if we don't talk about that at all, we just talk about what the schools can pay for the athletes. At the end of the day, the schools can do whatever they want with the money. Just there would be $5 million that would be set aside for everything that isn't football. So schools could put all their money into football if they wanted to, outside of that small amount, which has to go to women's and Olympic sports.
I am so glad that you mentioned the college sports. What was it? The College Sports Commission?
Commission, yep.
What is the deal with them withholding $100 million? Because this has been a huge point of discussion for a lot of analysts. There's been a lot of money that's kind of been withheld because of, I think there's been, I'd want to say some contractual things that have been sent to them. Things have got to get approved, but you still have all this money that's in that basically in that pool. Why has it not been released yet to the different schools?
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's closer to 140 or 150 million dollars is kept in arrears, and it's because the College Sports Commission has these guidelines they made up out of whole cloth, just created out of nothing last year with the House settlement, and they went and put these regulations in that the schools and the athletes had to meet. Certain criteria. It has to be for valid business purpose. It is technically not supposed to be pay for play, even though everybody knows it's pay for play. At the end of the day, that money being tied up. Let's just back up about the CSC. The CSC was supposed to have a mandate by the Autonomous Four Conferences, or the P5 originally.
Right.
Now it's P4, to go out and regulate all these things. The problem is when they built the thing, they put no enforcement mechanism in it that was enforceable. They said,
Right.
We're going to regulate it, but what gives us the power to do it? We give it to ourselves. What has happened is the conferences who originally paid to have the thing built, now all of them haven't approved it. I think the Big 12 has gone through and all the schools have approved it. But as far as I know, the SEC and the Big 10 have not gotten behind the CSC. Even though they're bitching and moaning about money, they haven't signed off to what would essentially be the enforcement mechanism. And why is that? You and I both know the reason why. They don't want that money controlled at the end of the day. They want it controlled for everybody else but them. them. And at the end of the day, that's why it hasn't been approved yet. So the federal legislation, the PCSA, is supposed to put teeth into the CSC, but without the conferences approving the CSC, there's no way they can regulate that money. So it's basically sitting in a limbo, and it's really broken. As far as I'm concerned, it's all going to have to be reset to zero. That money will be paid out to the athletes, and we'll say, okay, we'll start again.
So until that money is paid out, there's no way in hell that CSC is going to get approved by all four P4 conferences.
I see it as the problem is when it was built, it was in a different world. The paradigm was different.
Because you still had the old Pac-12.
Well, I mean that they were part of the contract with creating the CSC, but the bigger deal is that the CSC was created out of a House versus NCAA, which is a ruling. It's not backed up by any law outside of general civil law. There's no federal legislation that backs and puts the teeth into the CSC. So until the Congress either empowers the CSC and says, everybody, we are Congress, we can tell you what to do or not do, or the CSC is approved by all the conferences, or both, the whole thing is just extremely broken. And unless there's a negotiated settlement within the negotiated settlement, and federal legislation comes in and says, yes, we empower the CSC to enforce these rules, we're going to continue to live in this gray area where nobody is winning, and some players aren't going to get their money for a while.
I think that's the biggest issue, and I'm curious to see why we have not had the more notable players in college football, whether it be former or current, come up with, because I'm expecting there to be a players union at some point if PCSA is eventually passed. I would not be surprised if that is. If you're looking at the current landscape right now of college football, who would those players, past or present, would be to represent that players union? And what do you think the things they would discuss? What are they expecting at the end of the day?
The athletes have to stand up for themselves. Stanford recently, all the football players got together and said, we want to be part of a union, essentially. We're going to get together and we're going to help negotiate better things for our athletes. And what has to happen is the schools, the athletes have to stand up for themselves and say, we want this. Who goes into that? Who gets the vote? Who does represent the athletes in that position? That's kind of what has been the sticking thing in the who does represent the players. In my opinion, this is how I would do it. The simple way would be every team elects a representative. Those representatives go to some sort of a Congress, and that Congress elects 2 or 3 representatives for them, and then they're there for a rotating period of time, 2-3 years, whether they're still in school or not. They're there to represent the athletes at the negotiating table, whatever that may be. And then over time, those would build in their own rules. They would begin to regulate themselves more than even Congress or an organization like the CSC could do. That's how I would do it. But I do think you got it right. You need to have a mix of current and former players so you can have that flavor into what their experience is every day. You know, what do you think a backup center at Alabama should make versus how much that same athlete makes at Eastern Carolina? Are those 2 programs, should they be measured against each other? These are open questions. I think that's the stuff that we would really need to sort out. It's such a mess. All of it is such a mess, and it's a mess because the entire system's been broken for 25, 30 years. This should have been reorganized and done in the 90s, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it today.
You talked about that representative, and I think the one guy that kind of comes to mind, and I know that he's represented athletes when it comes to eligibility cases, and I don't know if he's going to be qualified more to kind of handle these sort of situations, but I look at a guy like Darren Heitner, who's been one of the better NIL lawyers over the past 2 years. He's represented hundreds of athletes at this point, helped get the TROs that they've needed.
Right.
I think he'd be a pretty good voice for these athletes because let's just be like I mentioned, he's probably one of the more trusted lawyers right now when it comes to the collegiate landscape. He's won multiple court cases against the NCAA, and he's pretty much had things go his way throughout the entirety of his career. But do you think that he could be a potential representative along with these athletes?
You look at like the Players Association in baseball, which is the closest analog you get to college football because it's literally unregulated, right? You go to a
Yes.
point and then you can spend over the cap, and you're only fined to go over. You're not restricted.
And if
Uh,
you argue for a salary cap, that's when they strike.
well, sure. I mean, all of everything that goes with that. That's
Yeah,
right. I mean,
because they've had multiple work stoppages and strikes in the past 35 years with
right.
MLB. So who's to say that this doesn't happen with college football? I don't think that we're expecting a strike. I think that the sport is way, way, way too popular and way too big, and there's way too money at risk for the athlete and for these and for all of these television people that are involved in these situations to go on strike.
I love Darren Heitner, right? We've got a relationship offline. We do DMs to each other, even though he doesn't always DM to me. He's so
Right.
busy. But I think the reason he's so successful is because he understands antitrust law. And the NCAA simply is breaking antitrust. The Sherman Antitrust Act is being broken every day by the NCAA. If you're going to look at a broken organization, it's the NCAA and how they've done all this power grab for decades, and nobody's really checked them. And until the Alston case happened 4 or 5 years ago, and athletes started to have the opportunity to get name, image, and likeness and media representation money, they didn't have a voice. And now that they do have that voice, I think there does need to be some maybe a lawyer or an agent that is somebody that the athletes can look to and say, you're a trusted source. We would like to rely on your expertise. And I think that will happen. The biggest question is going to be who does represent the players as a player, whether that's a former or a current. And how do you manage that? Do they rotate out every year? I mean, that's a tough question, and it's hard to have consistency if your rep is different year after year. So these are questions that difficult to answer, but they should be taken on. And everybody throwing their hands up and saying, "This is too big of a mess. I don't want to take the time to do it. Let's just do the one all be all PCSA to cover all ills." And it's just simply impossible. I don't think it's possible to do for college football.
So we're now in the August recess right now, and we've had multiple situations occur. You go back to the start of media days in the beginning of July. There's the whole ordeal with the Big Ten and the SEC not being on board because of the antitrust issues.
Right.
They finally come to an agreement on there. And then there's the issue that becomes more well known. It's the protection of women's sports. So, in your opinion now, because I've seen you say, hey, this bill is all likelihood dead on arrival, is there any way that this bill finally gets to a point where everybody can come to an agreement on the details of the bill? Is there any way, shape, or form that this is able to finally go through the three branches of government and get to the president's office?
I don't see how. Look, even if the Senate had approved it last week, even if they'd had the vote and the Senate had approved it 51 to 49, you still go through the summer break. In that summer break of about 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks, in all that time, these people have to go back to their districts and say, hey, this is the reason I supported this, or this is why I was against this. And personally, I don't think the political will is there to finally get the Senate vote done, but then to get it through the House. And the reason I say the House is more difficult, and if you followed me at all, I've said it all along, is because the House tends to support more towards the person, towards the individual. That's the House of Representatives. That's why it's so contentious all the time. And I don't think you can get a bill through that doesn't have the support of the AFL-CIO, any of the players' unions in the professional sports leagues, really the Black Congressional Black Caucus, those groups all have voting interest, and I don't think it get through the House to get then approved. Then you have to go reconciliation, so it gets through the Senate. Then it has to be written and approved by a committee in the House, and it has to be voted on by the House, and it has to be signed by the president, all in the span of 9 weeks from September, when we have to have an election, a national election. I just don't.
That just seems implausible at this point.
Yeah, it's hard for me to picture. And in Nathan Bomber Brown's world, what I would prefer, we bust this thing up into pieces in January, February. We actually put through 4 or 5 bills that represent these different interests, and then it's easier to pass those bills through the legislature.
So you feel like this bill needs to be broken down piece by piece over the span of a year and a non-election type of season, from January to August, September?
That's what I would like to see, and I think that's what's more plausible. One of the people I do shows with, I'm friends with, is Daniel Kelly, who is the antitrust attorney for the state of Florida, assistant attorney general for antitrust in the state of Florida. And she said 2 things. She said, I don't think there's any way this one big bill can get through. And 2, the only way I can see it getting through is you break it into pieces that now everyone can dive into and put their name to. They can actually stand behind pieces of the bill. And yeah, definitely, I think it might take 2 years, but if we could get it done in a non-election year, that would be the way to do it in 27.
So you like the bill, you just don't like the timing of this bill.
No, I don't like the bill at all. I like parts of the bill. Let's say
but you also said that you want this bill to be done. That's why I asked that.
Well, no, let me say it a different way. I like parts of the bill that I would like to see voted on individually. I don't see an omnibus bill. In other words, that's what this is. The Protect College Sports Act is an omnibus bill, which basically takes individual requests, like the cap on teams for the Big 12, Big 10, and SEC, like the 5-year independence movement, the paying players, the NIL and women's sports, all those things. They need to be broken and done piecemeal. I've never believed that this bill would get put through, and it's mostly because I think they're trying to do too much too quickly.
It's going to be an interesting month for sure during this recess.
Agreed.
What I'm really intrigued to hear now as we kind of close out, what are the parts of the bill that you personally like, and what are the parts of the bill that you feel like needs to be changed up? Because you mentioned you're heavy on that it's omnibus, that it just feels like this is just, they want to have everybody equal in this situation. But I think you and I both know, when we look at the power that the SEC and Big Ten has, there's no way in hell that this is ever going to happen.
Well, let me ask you a question back to you. Why were you talking about a PCSA that is supported by the Big Ten and the SEC?
Because it
benefits bill?
Because it puts money in their pockets.
Well, and why are they the majority? It's like they own the bill. I can't remember a legislative bill that went through Congress that was signed by a president that had the name of the entity in it, right? That basically it was legislation that was only to benefit 1 or 2 lobbies.
Right.
That's essentially what this is. The Big Ten and the SEC already have claimed so much ground. They already own 2/3 of all of college football. They don't want to give that up. And the easiest way to not give it up is to lock it in now. They want to lock in what they currently own. They don't want to give anything else away. So then breaking it into pieces, like I would say next year, they would lose a lot of that control, because now they have to lobby for each individual bill. The reason they want something to be happening now, especially them, well, I would even see the Big 12 and the ACC do, is they want something that can lock in their gains. Like if you own a stock, you do not want that stock ever to go back. So you basically sell at that price or hold at that price, and the only thing you're going to get out of it is the benefit as the thing continues to grow.
Right.
I don't think the autonomous conferences want to give anything up to anybody else. The easy way to do that is put a cap and lock everything in.
This is going to be a very interesting month as we enter the recess. Let's see what happens in the month of September with this bill. There's obviously a lot of things that have to get addressed. Nathan Bomber Brown joining us from the College Football Mafia, one of the best sports business podcasts out there on the internet. Nathan, talk to us about where we can find some of you guys' work and drop the YouTube, man. We'd love to have some of our viewers subscribe to you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, YouTube, just go to College Football Mafia. We're the only thing out there. It's pretty simple. At the CFB Mafia is our Twitter handle. And then if you want to follow me, it's a little bit of a weird name, but it's bomber_CFB Mafia, but the E is a 3. It's pretty simple. That's where we're at. And we going into preseason football now. We're going to do our picks for the season. And 2026 is going to be an amazing football season. I'm really looking forward to it.
Nathan, we appreciate your time, man. Guys, thank you once again for tuning into the Southern Sports Scene. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short here on the Southern Sports Scene. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, y'all stay blessed and don't stress. Y'all have a great rest of the day.
See you later. Peace out.